Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Pamela Phillips? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Pamela Ann Phillips was born in 1957 and grew up in Tucson, Arizona. She tried to get into the modeling business, but was not a model of success. She changed directions with her career and worked as a real estate agent. Pamela attended a party hosted by a wealthy real estate developer named Gary Lee Triano and made quite an impression on him. Gary was about 14 years older than Pamela. He was married with 2 children. Pamela was highly interested in Gary's money, and Gary was highly interested in Pamela's physical appearance. Gary divorced his wife so he could be with Pamela. On October 4, 1986, Pamela and Gary married in San Diego, California. They went on to have 2 children, one in 1987 and one in 1990. During the marriage, Gary continued with his business dealings as Pamela focused her energy on being unemployed and functioning as a socialite. Gary ended up making some poor business decisions and encountered significant financial difficulties. This was a deal breaker for Pamela. Pamela and Gary accused each other of harassment and filed for restraining orders. They fought over child support, visitation, and custody. Gary was so upset about Pamela leaving him, he spent time in a mental health facility. Ultimately, Pamela was awarded custody of the children and given about $250,000. In 1994, she moved to Aspen, Colorado, where she worked in real estate and continued to be a socialite. She burned through the money that she had received in the divorce settlement as she looked for a new husband. She wanted a man who had a net worth of at least $10 million. It did not matter if he was physically attractive or not. As this was going on in Aspen, Gary was still having business problems in Tucson. In March of 1994, he filed for bankruptcy. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On Friday, November 1, 1996, Gary Triano played golf at the La Paloma Resort in Tucson, Arizona. This was something he did every Friday, regardless of his financial status. After finishing 18 holes of golf, he returned to his Lincoln Town Car in the parking lot and sat in the driver's seat. Gary did not know that there was a 17-inch pipe bomb in a duffel bag on the passenger seat of his vehicle. At 5:38 p.m., the bomb was detonated using a remote. The explosion killed Gary instantly and sent pieces of the vehicle flying through the air. Some pieces were found hundreds of feet away. The police received multiple 911 calls, mostly because of the exploding car part. Here is what the police found during the course of their investigation. Gary had accumulated a substantial number of enemies. He had over $40 million in debt. Some of the money was owed to business acquaintances and casinos. He also had about 100 pending civil lawsuits that had been filed against him. Many people had a desire for Gary to no longer be alive. The police ended up receiving an intriguing lead from law enforcement in Aspen, Colorado. A man named Ronald Young was wanted for forgery and embezzlement. He had been in Aspen, but when the police started looking for him, he rented a van and fled the area. In October 1996, not long before Gary was killed, this van was found in Yorba Linda, California. Inside the van, the police discovered many interesting items. For example, paperwork containing Ronald's name, a shotgun, a map of Tucson, Arizona, lists in Ronald's handwriting containing the names of Gary Triano's friends and family members, an Arizona license plate, and various documents connecting Ronald Young to Pamela Phillips. The police investigated how Pamela was connected to Ronald. They found out that Pamela had started a romantic relationship with him after moving to Aspen. He was her neighbor. He also helped her with an online business. Evidently, Pamela made astrology charts for infants. Her company name was called Star Babies. As it turns out, Babies did not have much interest in astrology. Pamela's business wasn't a rising star. In April 1996, two businessmen reported to the police that Ronald had defrauded them. Pamela's attorney also contacted the police and told them that Ronald had committed fraud. A few weeks after this, Pamela told the police that she did not want to participate in the investigation. The police searched for Ronald without success. They learned that he had spent some time in the Tucson, Arizona area in July 1996. He stayed not far from Gary's residence. At around the same time, Gary told his girlfriend that he thought he was being followed. Investigators wondered if Pamela Phillips had hired Ronald Young to kill her ex-husband, Gary Triano. The police really wanted to find Ronald, but did not know where he was. He had disappeared into thin air. The investigation into Gary's death did not make any progress for years. This would change just over 9 years after the murder. Ronald Young was featured on an episode of America's Most Wanted, which aired on November 19, 2005. This led to his arrest 2 days later in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The police searched his residence, a storage unit, a hotel room, and his vehicle. They found that after Gary's murder, Ronald received payments from Pamela for several years. She appeared to be trying to pay off a $400,000 debt to him in small increments every few weeks. Pamela and Ronald tried to keep the payments a secret. Ronald kept detailed records and tape-recorded his phone calls with Pamela. On one occasion, Ronald reminded Pamela that he helped her with something and she was living off the benefits from it. Even though the two had spoken many times, the word murder was only mentioned during one phone call. Pamela had told Ronald that she could not pay any more money to him, and he warned her that she could end up in prison for murder. In October 2008, Pamela and Ronald were charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Ronald was already in custody, but Pamela had fled to Europe. She visited a few places before ending up in Austria. On December 3, 2009, she was arrested in Vienna. In March 2010, Ronald was tried, convicted, and sentenced to 2 terms of life in prison. He did not have the possibility of parole. Pamela was extradited to the United States in July 2010. She went to trial in 2014. On April 8, she was convicted of both charges. On May 22, Pamela Phillips was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the first-degree murder charge. For the conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, she was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. The 2 life terms are to be served concurrently. Pamela will never be released from prison. Now moving to my analysis. Pamela Phillips maintains her innocence. Her defense argued that people were virtually lining up to kill her ex-husband when he died. Even if Ronald was the perpetrator, that does not prove that Pamela was involved. The state, of course, believed that Pamela was guilty. They argued that she entered into a conspiracy with Ronald. This brings me to the question, was Pamela actually guilty of murder? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that Pamela was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. Pamela and Gary had a contentious relationship, especially after she filed for divorce. Pamela's motive for the divorce was financial. When Gary no longer had money, he no longer had Pamela. This makes Pamela seem shallow, self-centered, and lacking in empathy. After moving to Aspen, Pamela immediately started looking for another wealthy man to marry. In 1992, the year before the murder, Pamela and Gary took out a $2 million life insurance policy on Gary. The policy was payable to their children, but Pamela was the trustee. Pamela was the only person who immediately benefited financially from Gary's death. In the van that Ronald had rented, the police found many items that tied him to Gary and Pamela. This evidence was used to convict Ronald of murdering Gary. Why would Ronald have murdered him if Pamela was not involved? Pamela had a romantic relationship with Ronald, and they communicated frequently after he left Aspen. Pamela paid Ronald for several years in an effort to satisfy a $400,000 debt to him. They had several mysterious conversations about Pamela making payments to Ronald. In one of those conversations, Ronald mentioned how Pamela could go to prison for murder. One of Pamela's friends told a story that didn't look too good for Pamela. The friend said that Pamela and Gary had a fight one time. Afterward, she told the friend that she should just have killed Gary. Pamela specifically mentioned how Gary's golf game was predictable and she could hire somebody to kill him there. When Pamela was indicted, she fled to Europe. This makes it seem as though she was trying to escape responsibility. Pamela's trial was delayed because she claimed to have mental health problems. She said that she had a computer chip in her brain which was controlling her thoughts and actions. Clinicians believed she was malingering. Law enforcement officers claimed the pipe bomb used to kill Gary was characterized by haphazard soldering techniques, which were inconsistent with mafia quality standards. I don't think organized crime members are known for their soldering skills, but the police thought this was inculpatory, so I included it on the list. Moving to the exculpatory factors, it is true that Pamela was the only person who benefited financially from Gary's death. However, money isn't the only motive for murder. Gary had a lot of enemies. He associated with known criminals, including organized crime figures. It is not unreasonable to believe that Gary may have committed a crime or two himself during his career. Everyone who knew Gary knew that he was in the habit of golfing on Friday afternoon. This was in no way a secret. As far as the friend who claimed that Pamela mentioned hiring someone to kill Gary, the friend could have been lying or could have been confused about what she heard. It is also possible that Pamela was just joking. The payments that Pamela made to Ronald don't prove that she had hired him to commit murder. They could also point to extortion. After all, Ronald was a known criminal who had victimized many people through financial crimes. He was a con artist. He may have recorded their conversations as part of an extortion plot. It is also possible that Pamela and Ronald were in a criminal conspiracy, but not one to murder Gary. Maybe Pamela hired Ronald to harass Gary or to commit some crime completely unrelated to Gary. Perhaps Pamela and Ronald did conspire to kill Gary, but one of Gary's other enemies ended up getting to him first. This could explain why Ronald left all the inculpatory evidence in the rental van. He didn't commit the murder, therefore he wasn't worried about becoming a suspect. Perhaps Ronald killed Gary on his own. Maybe he was trying to win favor with Pamela, and when that didn't work, he changed tactics to extortion. When considering all the evidence, do I believe that Pamela Phillips was guilty of murder? Yes, I believe that she was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. When looking at Pamela's actions, the case against her comes down to receiving life insurance, paying Ronald, and allegedly telling a friend that she could hire someone to kill Gary. When factoring in all the other people who wanted to kill Gary, there is some doubt in this case, but I do not believe it reaches the level of reasonable doubt. Now moving to my final thoughts. Gary Triano was a real estate developer who lived a fast and dangerous lifestyle. To him, life was just about having a blast. In his quest to achieve explosive growth, he was careless with other people's money, reckless with romantic interests, potentially dishonest, and extremely shallow. Unfortunately, these personality traits tend to attract other people with the same traits. In the world of romance, Gary was always looking for a bombshell who would blow up his world. Ultimately, he found her. Those are my thoughts in the case of Pamela Phillips. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.